Good evening, everyone. It is 7:01 on my clock here. This is a virtual David Douglas School Board meeting, December 10th, Thursday. We're going to go ahead and call it to order, and we will start, as we always do, with our Native American land acknowledgement. Today, I would like to acknowledge the people whose land we are gathered on. Present-day Portland is located on the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia and Willamette rivers. Let us also acknowledge the robust Native community made up of tribal diversity that originates from around the country and whose journeys have brought them to Portland by ways of forced displacement or seeking opportunities. Today, these same communities celebrate their heritage, showing resilience and tenacity that would be greatly admired by their ancestors. All right, as always, we now have on the agenda our student body president report, and this is Christina Bowman. So go ahead and take it away. Thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me again. It's really nice seeing all of your faces. So to get started with the report, in our student council class, we just finished up our fourth virtual assembly. I'm not sure if any of you have seen it yet or not, but if you haven't, I would check it out. It's on our official DDHS page on Instagram. I'll go ahead and type that in there after I'm done. This one's my favorite by far. We have a funny little skit for where we announce our cookie decorating contest to get some student involvement. So that'll be really nice. It's going to run through winter break, I'm pretty sure. So everyone will have a little bit of time to get that in. We're also announcing our Winter Spirit Week in there, which we're going to have next week so that, kids still have something a little fun to look forward to since that's the thing we have every single year. Yeah, that is going to be our fourth virtual assembly. We have some student spotlight in there as always, so that's always great. And then yeah, so our first quarter finished out pretty good. We did notice that underclassmen tended to have a bit better grades because they're probably just feeling a little more motivated and everything. And yeah, but for the most part, I feel like it ran pretty smooth and everyone's getting the hang of things, which is good. And then lastly, I just wanted to talk about sports. First off, I want to acknowledge the fact that we do live in a high risk county and our community is being directly impacted by COVID every day. It's not something to take lightly. So, that's very important to think about. However, there are very strong feelings towards having sports return, and I believe that we can do that in a safe manner. Many other schools in Oregon, including those in the Mount Hood Conference, have returned maintaining safe protocols such as temperature checks, wearing masks, practicing outside, and also going over, COVID related questions, making sure students haven't been around anyone with symptoms, and if they have, making sure that, they're taking the proper precautions. Um, yeah, so based off of the conversations that I've had with my fellow peers, it would help students with not only their physical but emotional health, as well as giving them a hobby to look forward to, keeping them motivated to do well in school, considering you do have to have good grades in order to participate. And it'll give a little bit of normalcy to the crazy year that we've been having. So I just wanted to go ahead and share that with you. And that's pretty much everything I have for tonight.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the report and being so thoughtful about sharing what's happening in the schools. We very much appreciate it. And as always, you are more than welcome to stay. We love hearing your perspective, and we also know that there are other responsibilities that you may have. So feel free to jump off if needed too. So moving right along, it looks like we have three folks who have signed up to give testimony live. We have Michael Sonleitner from, as a OSBA candidate for position 17. Afterwards, we'll have Jennifer Brooks and then Laura Chapman on behalf of the Cadre of Distinguished Educators, or CODE. We also have a couple of written testimonies that I believe you all received from Lori. but we can make sure that you all get copies of those as well. So why don't we go ahead and get Michael, Jennifer, and Laura into the queue if possible, and we'll go ahead and take their testimony in that order. So Michael, whenever you are ready, if you can and are able, go ahead and unmute and begin. Hello.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yes.
Michael Sunleitner is both queer and odd. The queer portion is gender non-binary. My female side embodies an extremely empathic mother who died of suicide when I was 15. My single-parent father taught his son to be truthful and fight for justice, like Superman. Well, that's the queer part. Being both an academic and an activist is odd. The academic gained a political science PhD and taught courses for years ranging from US constitutional law to state and local government in Oregon. A 2010 Fulbright scholar teaching Gandhian philosophy in India, the academic Michael also recently published a landmark book on Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. It was entitled Soul Force and Social Change. Inspired by Gandhi, King, and others, the activist Michael has been arrested several times in civil disobedience actions and, surprise, often finds participation in direct action events more personally fulfilling than board meetings. As a PCC trustee, my efforts were crucial to declaring a PCC sanctuary institution, the first at any community college in Oregon, and creating a DACA resource center at PCC for DACA recipients and their families. I have also been co-chairing the PCC Board Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So I've been quite active at PCC and in the community. Bringing my conflict resolution skills to the OSBA board, I hope to improve bridges of cooperation between the Oregon Community College Association, where I now represent PCC, and the OSBA, which claims to represent all elected school boards in Oregon. Note, the 22 voting member OSBA board now includes 20 K through 12 district people, 2 others from Oregon's 20 educational service districts, and not one person from any of Oregon's 17 community college districts. Not one board member on the OSBA board who is voting comes from a community college. Pre-existing conditions, including viral discrimination and feelings of alienation, must be addressed both during these COVID times and as the current pandemic subsides. No vaccination will stop these realities. 2 PCC board colleagues, including a former OCCA president, have publicly declared that I am wasting my time seeking this OSBA board position. That shows you how septic and dysfunctional some OSBA members have been in relation to the OCCA. I would like to help bridge that gap. Your vote of support tonight may help me overcome some of those problems and better serve pre-K through community college students. Together, let OSBA better be the change that we all would wish to see in this world. 3 minutes?
I
It
think
was
so, yeah, it's right around 3 minutes. So if you have any kind of closing statements, that would be great.
well. My closing statement, I guess, comes from the heart. Um, I am not running for myself. In fact, I tried to get some other community college trustees to run. I think, in principle, we need to have representation. It comes down to many things, ranging from the common concerns we have about college transfer courses, dual credit courses. These things need to be ironed out on a statewide level. Services to foster students in pre-college ends with college. They time out, and we need services for them when they go on to higher education, because they're among the highest dropout rate risks. There are many areas where we are dysfunctional and not working together. And some of that relates to money. And that really hurts, because when the community colleges don't get sufficient state funds, that forces trustees in the 17 community colleges in Oregon to either raise tuition significantly to their employees.
Oh, sorry, that.
An unacceptable choice. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. If there is additional information that you'd like to share with us via written email, you're certainly welcome to do that. So
I sent you a copy of this statement, and you have other information. Thank you so much.
thank you. Next, we'll just go down the list. I believe we have Jennifer Brooks from Performing Arts and COVID-19. So Jennifer, go ahead and unmute when you can. I'll also go ahead and set a timer on my phone, which is the only way, unfortunately, that I can time it equitably. So you might hear that if you run up.
Perfect.
Okay.
You're perfect.
Go
Thank you. So hi everybody. So this is my year 23 at David Douglas, and I thought about, so I sent a document earlier, and maybe it's better if I read it, because now I literally opened up my kitchen and I cooked with kids tonight, because they had remembered when I had made lasagna for pit orchestra rehearsal for a musical night when we did a potluck. And so I made spaghetti sauce with kids tonight, which sounds probably pretty ridiculous, but it was, anyway, I'm not over it yet. So I have been serving with the NFHS, which is the parent group that oversees OSAA. And I have been talking about aerosol, like I actually know how to spell it. I've been talking about aerosol and droplets and things for months. And I was part of the national group that made the guidelines for how to return back to school and all of this. And I know that it's going to get discussed, that some of the opportunities that maybe we could do with kids, and we shouldn't be at school. I mean, everybody's right. I mean, nothing is totally safe yet. However, with the pandemic, and I'm not going to read my written statement, but one of the things that is there, and I included this in what I sent a couple of links with the CDC and the NFHS, and I also sent a PDF of the third report on the aerosol study, which all has to do with how to get kids back and how to get kids working. And obviously there's nothing that's 100% safe, but one of the things that is really major is the fact that there are some things that can happen outside. Whether it's cross country, whether it is musical theater, being under a tent, there are some things that can happen that are outside, that are masked up and socially distanced. It's been a huge international, I'll read this part, international effort to determine the risk associated with performing arts activities with COVID-19 transmission. There's a CDC article which I included for the board, that I sent in with a link, that they found that the transmission risk is 18.7 times higher indoors than outdoors. So, granted, yes, I want to be in school and I want to be in my classroom and I want all of that stuff, but I get it. And so if I could do something outside with kids, um, that would be absolutely incredible. So please take a look at the things that the NFHS has submitted, which I sent in with this document. Um, the leading researchers are a couple of the most amazing and highly sought after people that take care of, indoor health with somebody told me to take really good notes because I would get nervous when I would do this. And I've been teaching a really long time. I mean, this is my 23rd year at Douglas. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, notes are really, are really good. But they're leading researchers as far as how to take care of things inside of a building. But there are mitigation strategies, masking, distancing, and all of that, which there's some things we could do outside. So my philosophy this year, and people joke about this because I called it my 3 R's: my retention, reteaching, and rebuilding. There's a 4th R that's retiring, but I'm not quite there yet. Maybe 5, 6 more years. But it's in there, right? So there's all of these R's, and at the high school, I really think that, and I know that this is going to come up later. And Amber Kogel, bless you, my dear, having me speaking about this, but I would be happy to take any questions regarding this. There are those great links that are included. There are some safe ways to get kids on campus if we do it the right way. Outside, mitigations, security, so we're not so that we're not, taking care of other people's kids, and all of the other things that go into place. And I'm not asking for anything. I'm just saying that the science is there, and I'm not worried about rebuilding a program. I know how to build a program. I've built a program. I want to give these kids some hope. I absolutely want to give these kids some hope. So that goes along with my written statement that I turned in, and I'm happy to work with anybody masked up, socially distanced, and outside. And outside in January sounds horrible, but oh my goodness, to see those kids anytime, any day.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. We really appreciate your passion and commitment and everything that you've already shared. So thank you so much.
There's a lot of great.
Oh, I think we lost Jennifer, unfortunately. Oh, I apologize. I'm not sure what happened. Oh, I see your comment. It's all good. Oh, I apologize. I'm not sure what happened, but we really appreciate your time and taking time to write something up. We know that it can be hard and nerve-wracking, so we get it. And I also wanted to share that I really appreciated your Christmas tree in the back. Let's see, the last person. Well, I think the next person we have is Laura Chapman on behalf of the Cadre of Distinguished Educators, or CODE, Freedom Dreams. So Laura, if you are available, there you are, I see you. Go ahead and start. You will hear a just my own timer go off at 3 minutes.
Great.
Go ahead.
Great, thank you. So I'm Laura Chapman. I'm the Language Development Specialist at Menlo Park Elementary School, and I'm here to give my support I'm representing the cadre of distinguished educators, the code team. We would like to endorse the Freedom Dreams developed and presented by the David Douglas Staff of Color, which you will hear later today. Members of code are teacher leaders recognized by our peers in schools across the district. We lead critical conversations, we mentor our peers, and we are involved with instructional improvement in our schools. The Freedom Dreams are realistic, relevant, and necessary to support our students. We believe these dreams would make our schools a better place for staff and students. According to the David Douglas demographic information, only 35% of our students are white. That means 65% of our students identify as Black, Indigenous, people of color, or multiracial. That's a large majority of our student population. We need to show these students that they matter too. They need to see themselves positively in the books we read and the history we present. Primary resources that highlight BIPOC are assets and teach real history should not be supplements. They should be the core curriculum. And teachers should not have to find this on their own. It should be provided by the district. We too call for a lens of diversity in the selection process and support having the eyes of our students, families, and staff of color being part of the process. Our teachers deserve deep and meaningful professional development to support our diverse students. Our teachers want to empower their students and provide them with the tools they need to be successful in the world. The school district has designated funds to support this work, and we have concerns about programs and trainers being selected without meaningfully consulting and honoring students, families, and staff of color. Both elementary and middle school staff have expressed concern over the poor quality of recent trainings for UDL and restorative justice. We have highly effective leaders of color within our district and local partners who can help all staff be more culturally responsive. Staff involved in this work need to be compensated for professional contributions. Unfortunately, the load of progress is often put on BIPOC, but we need to show them we value this knowledge by compensating them. While the majority of our students are of color, only a handful of teachers are BIPOC. If we want a staff that represents our students, we can't just sit around and wait for it. We need to take action. If David Douglas truly values equity and diversity, we need to support students in their aspirations and reach out to our amazing diverse community to bring in BIPOC staff. We can't keep the status quo and expect to get better. We need to prioritize hiring BIPOC staff and value our current BIPOC staff. We strongly support the idea of a grow your own program. We see the benefits of our high school students being in lower grade classrooms. We believe in the hiring of community members to diversify our staff and mentoring classified staff into education required for instructional roles in the district. The David Douglas Staff of Color have 3 freedom dreams they are presenting tonight. We share the vision they have for our David Douglas community to be inspiring for and supportive of all students. Our students deserve it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate your testimony. Thanks for joining us. So I just wanted to reiterate, we had a couple of folks submit written testimony, Sabrina Sommer and Chris Kavanaugh, although I wasn't sure if Chris was available. I don't see Chris in attendance, but let me know if I'm missing anyone else. And just to confirm, Derek and Lori, I don't see anyone else who had signed up. Is that the full list that you all are aware of as well?
That is the full list.
Okay, great. All right, so that is what we have for that section. We are a little early, so I hope some of the folks who we had lined up for the next item are ready to go. I'm seeing a thumbs up from Kelly, so that's great. Thank you so much for that. So this next item is invited public input. We, let's see, Sahar and I and Donna have been in lots of conversations with our staff of color about really just the incredible inspiring organizing and just commitment to the district that our staff have. And we thought it would be useful for the board to hear some of that as well. And in addition, I know Frida and others also talked about the regional equity work that has been happening. So we thought it might be a good idea to just hear both what's happening regionally and then also what's happening most locally in our schools around equity and around really living out our values. And so we have for you some folks. I'm going to start off with the staff of color group, if that's okay, just because they're literally on the list first. And I believe, let's see, I have Andreina Velasco in the queue. I see Luan, although I'm not sure if you were part, but really anyone part of the presentation, go ahead and come in. We'll get Derek to move you along. I think I see Mo as well. And then feel free to unmute and go ahead. I think maybe we'd have about a 5-minute or so presentation from you all, and then about 5 minutes for Q&A afterwards. But we can be a little flexible too. And then we'll kick it over to the regional group.
I believe that I've that moved everybody over. Sodi, Francesca, Anne Maria, Tay Spears, Mohammed, and Lawan. I believe they're all moved over now.
We need Lawan over Derek.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, I see Luan.
Oh, here we go. Okay. For some reason it didn't. There we go. Okay. Should
Thank
be.
you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I can pull up the PowerPoint. Whoever's going to be speaking, if you just let me know, if you just say next slide or whatever, I've got it all queued up.
Great.
Thank you,
And then
Derek.
could you actually also, Derek, I'm sorry, could you also move over Liwaru now? I know he's part of the next panel, but I think it'd be great just to have him participate if you'd like. Great. Well, go ahead. Thank you all so much. I love seeing all of your faces. Thanks so much for joining us. Kick it off. I don't know who's starting, but whoever wants.
I'm going to start.
Okay, and then I'll still have the timer on my phone too, so you might hear that.
Okay. Derek, do you have it? The slide? Do you have the slides projected? Okay, great. Thank you. There. Awesome. Good evening, David Douglas board members, cabinet, and community members. On behalf of the David Douglas Staff of Color Group, my name is Sodi Fern, and I am a reading specialist at Earl Boyles Elementary. I want to begin by thanking you for allotting time in your meeting for us to present our Freedom Dreams. We've adopted this term, Freedom Dreams, by Dr. Bettina Love, the co-founder of the Abolitionist Teaching Network and famed author of numerous anti-racist books and articles. In her latest book, Dr. Love writes, freedom dreams are grounded in injustice. They are not whimsical, unattainable daydreams. They are critical and imaginative dreams of collective resistance. The 3 freedom dreams you will hear tonight are based on 7 months worth of work. They began by asking our staff of color what they believe are systemic barriers for our students. At our fall retreat, our district staff of color met to discuss the top 3 findings, which in turn became our freedom dreams. From there, we discussed actionable steps, or what abolitionist teachers refer to demands, to reach these freedom dreams. Before we get to those freedom dreams, though, I want to introduce you to our group through I am statements that were written at our fall retreat. These statements that I will be reading will be a summary of our collective group, but we have included the I am statements in full in the slides and packets. You can go to the next slide, Derek. We are more than what you think you see. We are a melting pot of generations from multiple languages, homelands, and other cultures. Representations of struggle and yet manifestations of the power to persevere. Next slide. We are full of purpose and dreams, dimmed only by the reality that we are not always welcomed in your world. We are carriers of the weight of the systems built to hold us down, yet we are confident, achieving, and strong. Next slide. We are the David Douglas School District Staff of Color. On this slide, you'll see a link to our I am statements in their entirety. Again, I invite you to take a moment to read them at a time outside our presentation. Without further ado, I'd like to pass the mic along to Anne Marie.
Thanks, Sodi. And Derek, can you move to the next slide, please? And one more, please. Thank you. My name is Anne Marie Reyes, and I'm a 4th grade teacher at Earl Boyles Elementary. Our first Freedom Dream developed by the staff of color reads, "We want the district to adopt a culturally responsive curriculum that affirms the identity of Black and Brown students." These are our demands. We demand current and relevant asset-based curricula that represent the students we teach, written by credible people with multiple lenses. We demand primary resources. We demand that teachers in DDSD use curriculum that highlights BIPOC as assets and combats the erasure of history. We support the Black Student Union's demand that Black Studies be a mandatory course at the high school level. We demand that our teaching staff have deep professional development to support the above demands. I'll now pass the mic to Francesca for an update on this Freedom Dream.
If you could go ahead and switch to the next slide, Derek. My name is Francesca Altman, and I'm a 5th grade teacher at Gilbert Heights Elementary. And as Anne Marie mentioned, I'm just going to be sharing with you some of the updates on the work that's being done district-wide in pursuit of this Freedom Dream. So as many of you know, as part of the School Board Racial Equity Subcommittee, our current work is to develop an equity lens that can be used in all decision-making district-wide, and that this would include in the selection of any curriculum materials that would be used. We are also, as Anne Marie mentioned, in support of Black Studies becoming a mandatory course at the high school in solidarity with the Black Student Union at DDHS, which we're very excited about the course being added, but as of right now, it's an optional version of an English course. We are also aware that multiple groups are currently examining the elementary's fuel ed curriculum for examples of cultural unresponsiveness and insensitivity, and that these studies are being done by the cadre of distinguished educators as well as our union and some individual groups within buildings as well. We also are aware that the district strategic plan very highly emphasizes equity and prioritizes culturally responsive curriculum and practice. And Freedom Dream number 2, in just a moment, you're going to learn a little bit about our demands surrounding professional development. But tied to this Freedom Dream, we believe that professional development should not only be in teaching practices, but also in actual content, as we know that many of us were educated with the exact curriculum that we're seeking to move out. And so we believe that teachers need to be taught accurate curriculum if they're going to be expected to teach that to their students. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it to Tay Spears.
Thank you, Anne Marie and Francesca. Derek, you can advance to the next slide. My name is LaShante Spears, and I am the assistant principal of Alisat Middle School. This evening, I have the pleasure of introducing Freedom Dream number 2. We want the district to rethink, reimagine, and reconstruct our professional development system to provide high-quality training on equity and culturally responsive practices for all licensed and classified staff. Our demands are as follows: fully operational and evaluated equity teams in every building, not the voice of just admin, should have the ear of admin. Stop outsourcing PDs. We have quality leaders of color, compensation for all of color who develop and facilitate professional development on equity and culturally responsive practices. Derek, you can advance to the next slide. When we look at the how and why and updates, it goes as follows. How and why? Teachers need to own implementation of equity PD. The updates we currently have now: our staff of color applied for and received funding and support from Multnomah Clackamas Regional Education Network, also known as MC-REN, to strengthen building equity teams district-wide. Certified staff's 1-year contract includes an MOU to launch a listening campaign centered on issues of equity. Our district has created a steering committee to create a 5-year plan for David Douglas School District. The thread of the overall work prioritizes equity at the forefront. Thank you. I am now passing the mic to Mohammed.
Thank you very much. Derek, if you could go to the next slide. Freedom Dream number 3. First, I want to say thank you to the indomitable Oregon Vice Principal of the Year, Mrs. Tay Spears, throwing that out. Quote, culture will eat strategy for breakfast every time, Peter Drucker. Over the last few years, the Staff of Color Racial Affinity Group has grown from an outfit for camaraderie, for being seen, for rejuvenation, into a vehicle to amplify the voices of our members, their loved ones, their students, and their families. We want to build a district culture that views imagination of what can be a core tenet of what shall be in the near future. Whether it is to grow our own programs for students, which will not come to fruition by just strategizing, but requires a reimagination of our culture so that students and former students want to become able teachers in our district. What is culture, you may ask? Quote, culture is not as biological as we may think. It is a group's knowledge production process that occurs as they understand and respond to their reality and create ways of being to survive or thrive in their everyday lives. Be loved. Mr. Derek Eden, thank you for changing the slide one more time. We here in David Douglas must look at our culture and demand that those who participate in this discussion continue connecting to the students and community by which this culture will grow. Our response must be based in reality of the changing demographics. We must reimagine what moving forward looks like in our district. Scary, sure. Necessary, we're behind. What we've noticed over time and in present is that without being unapologetically anti-racist, explicitly implementing practices in favor of hiring and recruiting staff of color, the system will autocorrect towards racism and white supremacy. Robust programs such as Grow Your Own programs for our youngins, I call them youngins, pedagogical practices, a strategic hiring plan, mentorship paid for staff of color, retention, impact of reduction for educators, but especially for our newly minted educators and employees of color. The ultimate goal of this and our other freedom dreams is to bend the arc of our district culture forward through an equitable lens. This is not an exercise. And with that, I will pass it over to my fellow colleague, Luan Nguyen. Thank you very much.
And next slide, please, Derek. Hello, everyone. My name is Luan, and I'm the technology coach at Mill and Menlo, and I'm also on the DDA bargaining team. So I'm pleased to announce that this past contract, the union DDEA and the district approved two MOUs that pertain to equity. One centered around the systematic equity, and the other on diversification of the workforce. And through that, we created the David Douglas Education Association equity team, and our main role is to work with the people from the affinity group, some members that are part of this, to continue that discussion and to make things happen. So around this, we'll talk about the culturally responsive PD, the mentorship curriculum, and other equity issues as in our freedom dreams. And out of this, we also, the DDA applied and received the OEA Empowerment Grant. And what that does is it brings us stipends for all this hard work and dedication to our folks, because in equity work, a lot of it is volunteer. So we were able to get this empowerment grant to empower our members and give them stipends for their hard work. And I've talked about the DDA equity team, and I'm very excited for our collaboration with the David Douglas leadership. And we in fact have a meeting this Wednesday that we're excited about. And again, those two MOUs include equity and the diversification of the workforce. So that's my part with the partnership with the DDA union. And I would like to thank everyone for presenting, and especially David Douglas for giving us this platform to share our freedom dreams and what we have been doing. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I love hearing all of the incredible work that you all are doing, but also just your passion and commitment to the district is, in my opinion, unmatched. So thank you so much for bringing it to the board level. Are there questions, comments from board colleagues? I think I can see everyone, but if not, I can try to see any hands raised. I'm seeing a chat from Sahar. That was great. Thank you so much for this presentation. If you all think of anything as we continue this conversation, just feel free to stick it into the chat or to let me know, and we can go ahead and get your questions answered. Thank you again, all. Oh, Aaron, I'm seeing your hand, so go ahead.
I just had a conversation with a colleague today about how Oregon has a lot of statutes against compensation for doing public service work. For instance, we're all unpaid volunteers on the board. How would that sort of provisions kind of affect the ability for people doing this sort of work for our district, being able to be compensated for their work? Or does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, Aaron, I don't know if that was going to me or to, but I'm happy to jump in and tackle a bit. There's a couple different ways, it kind of depends on how it plays out. For example, we have a mechanism within the contract now, and even outside the contract with stipends, which is extra pay. So when individuals do different or extra work or added work, there's a possibility of doing that. There's a mechanism in the contract that allows for extra or additional hourly work. And then there's also the opportunity to bargain in. I mean, we could look at the contract in general. We have MOUs on the table, as Luan mentioned, and this entire group that can bring that to the table and lift that up to talk about in the bargaining process. So, for example, if an organization, group, or club comes and says, "Hey, we'd like to talk to DDA," and DDA ultimately talks to us, that's the one thing. If we're talking about bargaining, it does have to go through DEA, but this is a DDEA group. So this is a team that will bring anything bargain wise or salary wise that will come through the process. So those are a few different processes or ways that it could happen. I don't know if that answers your questions there.
It does. Thank you. I also want to just thank the group. I didn't realize there was such a massive disparity between our students of color and our staff of color. And I thank you for raising awareness around that topic and around everything you've talked about tonight. I really appreciate all the hard work you're putting into helping make things right. Thank you.
Stephanie, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I mean, wow, blown away. This was amazing. So many thoughts, like what you were saying, Mohammed, about culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? I would love to know how that gets actualized, because we make strategies all the time. Like, how do we shift the culture? I have lots of thoughts around, and I've said it for several years now, how do we measure our equity investments as we're doing our budget? Like, we need to have a baseline and we need to be able to know what investments we're making. And then, like, as someone who serves in a policy role, like, what are the policies that need to change? And I know that doesn't change culture, but like, that's something this board has the direct responsibility of doing. So like, if there are ideas that would be helpful, like, we want to hear them. I thought this presentation was so inspiring, and my kids are already 10. I don't want to wait 5 years. Like, let's make this happen. It was great. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, that was all really great. Thank you all so much. There were some really great quotes in there. I'm going to go back and watch this and get those. Sodi, that quote you said at the beginning regarding the freedom dreams, and then the way you all laid it out, they're tangible, they're important. What is the quote about it being, big enough that it makes an impact, but small enough that it's doable and can be done? So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. Yes. Thank you. Thank you again so much for your time and your thoughtfulness. I personally felt like I was in class again, but it was a fun class that I wanted to be in. And I guess that I'll close it out by saying, not only do I appreciate the time and dedication, but know that I'll continue to support these and similar efforts that you all have. Know that you have a champion in me, and I think in some others here, really dedicated to moving this along with you. So know that we're here to help and continue the conversation. So thank you so much. We will move right along to Liwaru. Liwaru, if you can go ahead and unmute when you're ready.
Hello, I am Luwaru. I am the Multnomah Education Service District's Equity Director. I use pronouns he, him, el. And as I have been working on this initiative over the past year or so, I am here to share with you information related to our Regional School Board Equity team. I sent over a presentation with slides in it and also materials for the board that has our entire regional school board equity team plan in it. If you should wish to put up that presentation, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm going slide by slide into it. Over the next half hour, I want to share with you about how our process works. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to half hour. I want to share with you about our process. So on my second slide, I share with you just the idea of institutional racism. It was spoken about earlier, but there are three key areas that fit within that most commonly. Policies, which the board is responsible for in developing the policies for a district, or protocols or things that we have in place at the staff level, whether it's staff handbooks, processes for our students to follow, expectations for our staff or teachers or administrators. And then the practices basically oftentimes being either unwritten or unformalized, but the way in which we've done business as an organization. And so when we're talking about institutional racism, that informed us a lot for our regional school board equity team. In developing the process, my next slide shares information about the design and how we got to it. This has been going on for about the last 2 years. We worked with the organization Center for Equity and Inclusion, and our regional board team pulled together individuals from a variety of districts. And so over the last 2 years, we've had work group members from David Douglas, from Gresham, from Reynolds, from Parkwell school districts, as well as Multnomah Education Service District. And so board members were represented there over the last 2 years. Among many of the board members that were involved, Donna Barber and Sahar Maranovich were two that represented well in creating the plan that we ended up with. And what we did was we created an opportunity for primarily many of the individuals involved were people of color in board positions. And we continued along a process with superintendents as well, where the superintendents had an opportunity to work with Center for Equity and Inclusion over the last 2 years in their superintendent's meeting. CEI would come and present to them as well to walk through a process. So those are simultaneous ongoing processes in place. But the regional equity team was a central focus of that. So a lot of the early conversation was about aligning the vision of what we wanted to do. What is it that we're trying to accomplish with the regional school board equity team? And through a lot of conversation and working through a variety of different issues, particularly trying to figure out what are some of the driving core disparities that we're seeing within our roles as board members that we can address through a collective effort. Again, there's a concept of reality that you can go fast by yourself, but you will go much farther together. And so the concept was we're going to actually be able to accomplish more by working together regionally to address some of our common issues. From that, we developed outcomes and strategies that we would take place and take part in. And then the point that we're at now is where individuals are sharing this information along with and doing work along with their individual boards and their superintendents. There's a process in which each one, as we talk about the different strategies, can approve the different elements that they plan on incorporating. So as I mentioned, I've sent over the Regional School Board Equity Team overall plan, but I wanted to touch base on some of the overall elements that are within that. So on my next slide, I talk about what our aim is to do. And it's basically about developing timelines and accountability and performance measures for each action area. And that's an element of working within a systemic structure that values timelines, accountability, performance. What we want to be able to see is something that we can tell without measuring, though we will measure. We want to be able to know from our students on up that they can tell that there's a difference between the systems that we grew up in, the systems that we are currently in now, and the systems that they are the benefactors of. And so that'll be a large portion of the accountability element for us. There's key goals that we have available within our structure. For the most part, we're trying to figure how we are making sure that we're developing the will and skill at the board level to actually change the experience for board members of color in particular, how we center the perspectives and recommendations of board members of color, and then how do we collectively, regionally address inequities that impact the metro area that we can address from an educational perspective, and in particular as a policymaking entity as an education board. So the key goal areas that you see there: building capacity to lead collectively for equity across the region, develop a more inclusive, healthy, and high-functioning board culture, develop and operationalize a shared equity lens in board decision-making, identify 2 to 3 regional disparities to address collectively. And though there are more areas to within the plan, we figured we'd have some core areas that we knew that we were going to do together. We also wanted to develop 2 to 3 shared equity goals and strategies to address the disparities that we were seeing across the region. And then finally, to unify efforts toward meeting those goals collectively. One of the things that we have the opportunity to do within our county with our boards working together is to have a collective thought process into how this works, how we can create solutions, find out the commonalities that are in place. There are a variety of disparities that we identified with from the Regional School Board Equity Team. It included everything from white Eurocentric curriculum that was non-inclusive of non-dominant communities. It included overrepresentation of students of color in special ed, deficit mindset and discourse about the students and families of color that we serve and support. 2 core elements were rose up to a priority level and they accompany the goals that we put into place. Those core areas were the isolation and marginalization among board members and staff, and school staff of color. That isolation and marginalization fit consistently across several of the goal areas and the strategy areas. And then our thought process that ran through as a consistency across all of the districts that were involved is a disproportionate discipline of students of color. So on the next slide, it goes into the details about our equity inclusion goals and strategy. And there are 4 main areas: developing a regional school board equity team toolkit that helps advance equity and create an inclusive school board experience. The second was developing a shared equity framework and lens and ensure consistent collaboration across school boards in the region. This does not mean having the identical framework or identical lens, but being able to share between each other what commonalities work for the individual needs of our specific districts. The third area was about increasing the involvement, engagement, and recruitment of communities of color in school board processes in the metropolitan area. There's a variety of ways in which the community is welcome to be a speaker, perhaps, to say something at the beginning of a board meeting, but the interaction does not often allow for an opportunity for true engagement in conversation. As a matter of fact, most board policies hold that a person has a certain number of minutes to speak and then they move on, and then the board moves on to the next person that's speaking. And so part of it is about increasing the engagement as well as the involvement and how we pull in communities of color into the process. Not only that from an outside perspective, but internally, how do we involve and engage and recruit communities of color in being representatives on boards, and so that there's greater representation there. Our fourth area is about advocating for and supporting a regional school board, advocating for our regional school boards in increasing school staff of color and eliminating discipline disparities amongst students of color. Understanding that this is a board making bodies, there are still policies that can be put in place that stimulate the work that's being done within the district to be able to make a concerted effort that actually yields drastic results in the increase in staff of color and drastic results in eliminating discipline disparities for our students of color. I wanted to wrap up with the next slide of mentioning that the school board, regional school board equity team put together a workshop on October 24th, invited all of the region's school boards to be involved. And that in that session, we had an opportunity to engage about the work, the progress, and what we could do together to be able to improve the conditions that exist. It also was an opportunity to pull in more board members than just the representative ones that come to the development of this process over the last 2 years, but the entire board is invited to come. We're going to provide more opportunities like this moving forward, and I would encourage you as board members to pay attention when those come up and participate in those as we move the work forward. Board members were the ones that shared what was happening. And on the next slide, these are some of the questions that we engaged and asked at that session, as well as an earlier one in October with superintendents. What is the opportunity here? Which goals are you truly drawn to? In particular, are there some that you feel that you could take advantage of moving on immediately? And then what questions or concerns are coming up for you related to this plan? Though this plan is something that a group of us work together to build up, we also know that the realities of our push in terms of equity and the work that we do is going to come with resistance. There's a varied levels of that. Some of that resistance is purely a matter of professional inquiry. How can we make this happen when we have this barrier in place? That's resistance, but not a resistance that should not be there. That's a resistance that allows us to be able to understand barriers and overcome them. But we also know that could also be barriers put in place or concerns that are in place that may put up some barriers, and we wanted to be able to give an opportunity to hear from that. So this is our regional school board equity team's equity plan. As I've mentioned a few times, you have the full plan with all of the strategies listed out that's been included for each of you as board members. And we would welcome any questions or involvement from board members as it relates to the development of the work moving forward. Next slide says probably drink water or guard your health. No, it just says thank you. Okay, well, I believe that you should guard your health and drink lots of water. That's how I'm wrapping this up. If you have any questions, let me know.
Rita just took you up on it. I saw you drinking water.
Sorry about that. Any questions or comments? Thank you, Liwar. We really appreciate your presentation and the thoughtfulness that's been going behind what has been a really long process. It's really helpful for us to hear, since I know a lot of us, myself included, weren't able to make the workshop. So thank you.
Understood. Yep, you're welcome.
Any questions, comments from colleagues on either one of these presentations before we move on?
I'd just like to say I was able to attend the workshop, and I think any board member for future workshops, it's really interesting and you'll learn a lot. So I encourage anyone to attend them.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in, Andrea, as well, and just say thank you to Liwar and our staff of color group, from Muhammad to Tay to, I don't have everyone in front of me, but we are so fortunate to have such an amazing team and such amazing leaders and educators in our district that are, taking this charge, supporting, demanding, working, all of the above with us. And I just want to thank all of them for their courage to be here today, for their support, and ultimately their drive to do the right things for kids, because it makes a difference. And there's slow moves and there's big moves, and I think we're all ready for big moves, and we're excited about that work. So again, I just want to take the minute to say thank you to both and the entire presentation, because it makes a difference and we're going in the right direction. It's time to just go faster and deeper. So thank you so much.
Awesome. I I think that's all. We will go ahead and move on. Thank you again so much for your time, for your thoughtfulness. Know that we will continue to prioritize this as school board members, as David Douglas community members, and just appreciate the information. So moving right along in the agenda, excuse me, the next item that we have is our consent agenda. This is an action item. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve consent agenda.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Christine, thank you for the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will just call how I see the squares on my board. I guess I'm first. I vote aye. Frida?
Aye.
Sorry, Christopher. Barber?
Aye.
Muranovic?
Aye.
Stevens?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Farrow?
Aye.
Awesome. The consent agenda is approved. Moving along, we have a update from our team on the strategic plan. This is just a draft plan, or a draft, excuse me, strategic plan update. The folks we have lined up for the panel are Malik White, DEI, Michael Contreras from Communication and Family, Communication and Family and Community Engagement, Holly Shower, Health and Wellbeing, and Andreina Velasco and Ceci Hernandez, Highly Effective Instruction. So as we are getting those folks in the queue, feel free to unmute when you are able and ready, and begin. And again, we have Malik White, Michael Contreras, Holly Shower, and Andreina Velasco and Ceci Hernandez.
And Andrea, we also have one other parent and community member, Nathan Dunbar, here's this evening to support. He's not going to be presenting, but he's been an active part of this team, and he volunteered to be here as well. So I just want to make sure we recognize him as well. And I know Derek's pulling them over. Derek, once you get everyone over, if you pull up the slide deck, we'll get started. So as Derek's doing that, and as the slide deck gets going, I get the privilege of the first two slides. And really all it is an opportunity to explain what Andrea just explained, that this is an update, kind of a process to talk about where we've been, the process, and then look at some of the product, the direction we're going, and then ultimately our next steps. But with that said, really the biggest thing and takeaway from all of this is just a tremendous thank you to our community, to our steering community, to our over 1,200 individuals that responded to a survey, and the feedback from our families and staff and others within our community, because so far it's been a tremendous activity, so many voices at the table, and you will see some of the amazing work that this team has put together. And I'm just so excited to share some of it, and again, share some of our next steps. So Derek, next slide. Thank you so much, Derek. So the process, I'm going to be very quick because I think it's more important to hear from our community members that are here and staff members. But ultimately, we looked at our frame, the communication process, a discovery process, and then design and plan. And really, we're kind of in the design and plan process, and ultimately getting feedback, right? That's part of that design and plan process as well. But it started out, as you know, with the board kind of talking about the importance of a strategic plan, looking at 5 years to our future, and putting a stake in the ground that we're doing this. We know we had a curveball last year with COVID. We'd actually probably be done with this, but unfortunately, bit of a curveball, and we got to this fall and we said, can we do this virtually? Is this something we can do? And to be honest, we didn't know, but I think it's actually been a very productive process, and I'm excited about the results. But we have a strategic planning group, work group, high level. We have a steering committee, and then we've had a number of different open houses and community involvement as well. So with that said, jumping to the next slide, Derek. Kind of a quick snapshot. There's actually been more than this as well, but in the engagement, you can see again over 1,200 plus surveys. We had a community forum with 19 attendees. We had focus groups with over 66 participants. And then we also had another community forum with 23 attendees. Again, these were the big items, but there was others, including interviews and processes, connections, and ultimately what we're going to talk about this evening, and our amazing steering committee that has done so much of this work is going to walk us through our full 4 pillars or 4 areas that we're dialing in on and ultimately developing our strategic plan around. So if we go to our next slide, I believe Malik is going to walk us through and share a little bit about DEI.
So hello everyone, good evening. My name is Malik. I'm an alumni of David Douglas High School, class of 2013. I'm also an educator in our district. So it's a pleasure to be here with you all, speaking on behalf of Group 1 Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion of the Strategic Planning Committee. So I'm just going to go through and just give you a overview of our conversations over the last few months. So a description, reading at the top of the slide, environments and communities that value and respect the diversity, equity, and inclusion of all students, staff, and community members. All students, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, disability, sexual orientation, religion, citizen status, socioeconomic status, zip code, deserve an excellent culturally, linguistic, relevant education opportunities that help them achieve their full potential. Every staff member deserves a safe and great place to work. So I'm not going to go through every box on the slides, so just try to follow along as best as possible. I'm going to go in order. So our equity means statement. Each individual student, staff, and community member feel valued and respected. In David Douglas Schools, students, staff, community members feel represented in all school environments, and events. In addition, David Douglas Schools is a safe place for all individuals, and the diversity of our community is represented in our staff. So this is what our goal is in conclusion of the 6 years that follow the planning committee. If you don't mind, so the KPIs is what I'm about to go into now. So letting you know our action steps and how we are going to analyze our steps forward. So Derek, you don't mind switching slides? Thank you. Okay, so action step number 1 is to connect and collaborate with community partners to get data and collaborate around programming, especially related to DEI practices. So diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. We also are hoping to plan for each school to have an equity team with the focus on student and family outreach. And then focusing on the hiring of more teachers and staff of color. And the reality is that we want to lead the state and change the narrative of BIPOC representation in the state of Oregon for teachers. There's nowhere else to really look for how to do it. We just gotta, be game changers. And that goes into the Grow Your Own program, being able to provide those successful routes to adult success, to experience success in adulthood. Also trying to get more stories like my own, graduates of color coming back to enrich and bless the community. So Derek, you don't mind going to the next slide? So action step number 6 increase opportunities for all students to participate on leadership teams with the purpose to give feedback on decisions, issues, topics, and engage school and district improvement. This gets back to that Grow Your Own program, giving the kids to interact with high school kids, interacting with middle school kids, and middle school kids interacting with elementary students, giving them the opportunity to really find those dreams, those lifelong dreams at an early age. Number 7, cross-district student focus groups. So kids being familiar from middle school students from Al-Assad, knowing students from Floyd Light working together. Family involvement, identify people within the neighborhoods to connect with other parents to connect to other parents to schedule events, and then also keeping our ideals open to virtual options for our culture for our school events. So, virtually telegraphing it like we are right now. Derek, do you mind going next slide, please? Last 3 action step is be intentional about hosting meetings in multiple languages and make that a standard of practice. And then families see themselves in the building, include representation of all cultures and physical environments and events, so multicultural nights. And then also utilize these events, these multicultural nights, in correlation with our sporting events and other awesome events that we take place at our high school. So, utilizing that breezeway, trying to fill that up with all the beautiful representation that we have in our communities. But anyways, that's all I have for you all. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share and to be here with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you, Malik, for your voice, your presentation, and all your work in this process. You've definitely supported this and been a tremendous help. Transitioning to focus area number 2, I believe Michael is going to be presenting focus area number 2.
Yeah, good evening. Thanks for having me. I'm Michael Contreras. I'm our principal at Ron Russell Middle School, and I'm happy to be here tonight representing our communication and family/community engagement group of the Strategic Planning Steering Committee. I don't know why, but I cannot see the slides. I have the slides here on my slide deck. So Derek, I'm on slide 8, if that's, assuming that's what you're on. But we kind of wanted to give you a little bit about the arc of our conversation in this group, because we had quite a few ideas and really trying to get at how do we support really equity in all of our families in our district, knowing we have a very diverse district and just a desire to do that. So as we thought about things, we really wanted to make sure that our families, number one, felt welcome in our school buildings, in our school community, any sort of events. And so we also thought about not just having them feel welcome, but also having them actually be partners in how we collaborate on decisions, and having them be not just hearing the voices of stakeholders, but really being decision makers with us. And so thinking about how do we ensure that our families are part of the decisions that are being made at the school building and the district level. We also felt like it was our responsibility as a school to reach out to families, not the other way around. So if families aren't feeling welcome, if families are not engaging, then we have to do something different. Our families are who they are, and we believe that they have value that they bring, and it's our responsibility to really bring them in. The third part we thought about is how different this looks for kindergartners versus 12th graders, right? When I'm 5 years old, I want my families in the building. We want to be more so bringing them in so they understand what's going on in the school, so then they can help their students more and help us help their students. When we get to 6th, 7th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, it's the opposite. It's our students who are now representing us. So everything they do, from good or bad, who our students are in the community represents our school. And so thinking about how do we engage and empower our kids to be representatives of who we are. So Derek, if you can go to slide 9. So you'll see here, as we look at some of our initiatives and goals, really kind of center around some of those things. For instance, student and family ambassadors. How are we using our students to engage our families, using our families to engage our students? Kind of that two-way street was really important to us. Kind of like Malik said, we had student mentors. So thinking about that, it is really great for 14, 15, 16-year-olds to work with 8-year-olds. It helps and makes the 8-year-olds better. It helps and makes the 16-year-old better. And so kind of having that bridge. Culture responsive community programming. So thinking about, again, how are we engaging families and bringing them in? Because that's really important to us. The other piece we thought was that our equity teams in our building should include students. and family stakeholders. Obviously, that's going to be age appropriate by level and building. And lastly is thinking about, again, how do we connect those families to being the decision makers or helping us make decisions in our building. So encourage that input at things like site council and doing that. So if we can do that really well, we feel like we can encourage and improve our communication and family community engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Really appreciate your time, energy, and effort in all of this and in the presentation. Transitioning to focus area 3, health and well-being, and I believe Holly is going to be presenting this section.
Yes, thanks, Ken. My name is Holly Shower, and I'm the principal at Ventura Park Elementary School. And I, first of all, just want to say thanks to the whole group, the whole steering committee. I was really grateful to be a part of this process, and I was impressed at the representation, parents and staff members, pre-K all the way through CTP age. And it was just, it was an honor to be a part of it. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about focus area number 3, health and well-being. I'm just going to start right at the top with our description. And health and well-being is a big, huge category. So we try to narrow down our scope a little bit within these descriptors. But our description is each student and family feels supported in culturally specific ways through a comprehensive network that addresses the whole child. And equity means statement below is the district will strengthen collaboration with our community leaders to help empower our families in navigating district support systems, emphasizing inclusion of BIPOC and ELL families. And that's something that we keep hearing throughout the board meeting this evening in a lot of different focus areas. We have 3 main goals that we listed here under health and well-being. And the first goal really encompasses a lot of the work of the focus area, which is addressing the social determinants of health. And under there could be more, but under these we listed food insecurity, mental health, physical health, housing needs, emotional health, and cultural needs, and most specifically are the language needs of our families and students being met. Goal number 2, prioritizing ELL and BIPOC families with an intentional loop of communication and feedback. And you'll notice that a lot of our focus areas are connected. This relates directly to the communication focus area. A lot of the things that we mentioned here also relate to our DEI group. We'd like to be more systematic as a district in determining our health and well-being needs, delivering services, and creating clear channels of communication. We talked a lot in our group about how we have so many good things going on in our district to help families with their needs, but that a lot of that is siloed and building to building, and how we'd like it to become much more systematic pre-K through 12 and beyond. Goal number 3, to analyze and shift the mindset around the district's current practices of student management and discipline to determine impact on disproportionate data. And again, you heard some talk about that in our DEI focus area, which shows again how all of our focus areas are connected. We kept finding that out as we did this work. I'm going to skip to the KPIs, the key performance indicators. And this is where things get a little bit murky. This is where we had we still have a lot of hard work in front of us. These are really in their infancy, still being developed, still being fleshed out. We also didn't have all the district information at our fingertips to know what indicators can be measured. So this is what came out of our groups brainstorming over several weeks. So some indicators could be the number of families served through our pantry programs, the number of families receiving free and reduced lunch rates. And that is a difference in the number of families who qualify also are not always the number of families who are receiving that. Attendance and retention rates, partner caseloads by building, and some of our partners are Trillium, IRCO, Multnomah County Mental Health. We thought that quarterly would be a manageable time to have some family check-ins, maybe via survey on those main health indicators: food insecurity, mental, physical, housing, emotional, cultural. We also said that this could be modeled like our first CDL effort with our family communication, where we really did a good job of tracking what families were communicated, what their needs were, and what the follow-up was going to be. And also the next key performance indicator could be tracking disproportionate data over time. Next slide, please, Derek. Thank you. Now we get into our action steps, which need to be fleshed out even more than our key performance indicators. But these are just some ideas. The first one is what we spent the most time talking about, and that's our wraparound approach for student services. Most buildings have wraparound services that include community partners, school resources, community resources to all come together to address the needs of the child and their whole family. And we would like this to be even more systematic district-wide, and possibly include more social workers and therapists being integrated into the school. Action step number 2, training and empowering our families in culturally specific ways to provide support in the community. We didn't finish this one, being ambassadors, and this was mentioned in another group, I think DEI, having neighborhood ambassadors that are community members to be the connection between families and schools. Number 3, bringing in more restorative practices, which we've already begun. And how can we use this to track inequities to bring in more accountability? And then at action step number 4, providing more awareness of healthcare access for our youth so that they and their families know how to get access and coverage for healthcare. We have a lot of good efforts going on, again, building to building, but we talked again about being more systematic as a district. And then lastly, providing more culturally specific messages to help build trust. And like I said, this is just a starting point in a draft, but that is what we have for focus area number 3, and I was happy to be a part of the work so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Really appreciate your time and energy in this project. Finally, we're going to transition to focus area number 4, highly effective instruction. And we have 2 presenters for this one. We have Miss Andreina Velasco and Miss Ceci Hernandez, who are going to walk us through and share us the work in our focus area 4.
Thank you, Ken. Good evening, board members. My name is Andreina Velasco, and this evening I will present the section of the strategic plan focused on highly effective instruction. I was honored to be part of a group in the steering committee consisting mainly of parent leaders, specifically Latina women and mothers. I'm a dual language preschool teacher in Lincoln Park Elementary School, and I'm also a Latina mom and leader. As mothers and community members, the conversation in our group centered on our children. What kind of instruction do they and all of the brilliant and diverse youth of David Douglas deserve? Our children deserve highly effective instruction that integrates academic and social emotional learning. They deserve instruction focused on equity that empowers them, that includes and affirms their diverse identities, experiences, and voices, but that also affirms the voices and experiences of their families. You will see that description at the top of this slide. You will also see the goals we need to achieve that type of instruction here. Next slide, please, Derek. And here are the action steps our district needs to take. We need to build systems that meaningfully include and affirm diverse students, families, and teachers in curriculum, training, and instructional practices. Next slide, please. We need district-wide, high-quality, and ongoing training for teachers and staff on anti-racist, culturally responsive curriculum and practices, social emotional learning, restorative justice, and authentic student and family engagement. Next slide, please. We know this is a work in progress, and we especially need the input of our secondary students and staff, but our fundamental message is clear and aligns with the focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout the strategic plan. That message is nothing about us without us, nothing for our students without our students, nothing for our families without our families, nothing for our teachers without our teachers. And now I'd like to introduce another member of our team on highly effective instruction, Señora Ceci. She will share her perspective in Spanish, followed by interpretation in English by Aide Valerio Juarez, Family and Community Partnership Coordinator. Thank you.
Hola, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Cecilia Hernández. Soy padre de familia del distrito escolar. Participé en el comité de estrategia y en la última reunión que tuvimos compartí algo basado en mi experiencia personal y que ahora compartiré con ustedes. Espero que realmente la equidad se vuelva práctica en los salones de clase y no solo quede escrito en un papel. ya que yo he visto ya los dos lados de la moneda. Por un lado, mi hija se acaba de graduar, ella pudo adaptarse al sistema educativo y le fue excelente. Por otro lado, está mi hijo, él está cursando el 7º grado, tiene ADHD y que me ha tocado pedir explicaciones cuando lo creo verdaderamente necesario respecto a ciertos tratos que recibe, más ahora en la secundaria, como por ejemplo que el maestro le cerrara la puerta sin haber sonado la campana y que después de yo interferir no lo volvió a hacer y tampoco tuve una explicación de por qué lo hacía. O que un educador entre al salón de clases y referirse a algunos estudiantes como knuckleheads, no veo de qué manera este tipo de acciones estén reforzando sus fortalezas. En las conferencias del otoño pasado salí llorando de la escuela porque me pregunté, si ellos no pueden ayudarlo, ¿quién más lo hará? Su consejera me dijo que lo sentía, que el sistema educativo no estaba hecho para mi hijo. ¿Se han preguntado con cuántos niños los maestros se están equivocando? Mi hijo tiene una familia que lo apoya, pero la realidad es que no todos los niños cuentan con esto. Hay padres de familia que tienen ciertas limitaciones o obstáculos, como no saber leer, escribir, no hablar el inglés, entre otras, para poder abogar por sus hijos. A estos niños son a los que estamos perdiendo. Nuestros niños valen más que una simple calificación y merecen ser realmente respetados y valorados como todo ser humano. Gracias por escucharme.
Hello, good evening. My name is Cecilia Hernandez, and I am a parent of the school district. I participated in the steering committee, and in our last meeting, I shared something based on my personal experience, and now I want to share it with you. I really hope that equity becomes the practice in the classrooms and not only written on paper, since I have already seen both sides of the coin. On the one hand, my daughter just graduated. She was able to adapt to the educational system and she excelled. On the other hand, there is my son. He's in 7th grade. He has ADHD. And I have had to ask for explanations when I think it's truly necessary regarding the way he has been treated in middle school, such as the teacher closing the door before the bell rang. And after I interfered, he did not do it again. And I never received an explanation as to why he did it. Or that an educator enters the classroom and refers to some students as knuckleheads. I don't see how this type of actions are reinforcing their strengths. At last fall's conferences, I left school almost crying because I wonder if they can't help him, who else will? His counselor told me she was sorry that the educational system was not made for my son. Have you wondered with how many children are teachers making a mistake? My son has a family that supports him, but the reality is that not all children have this. There are parents who might have certain limitations or obstacles, such as not being able to read, write, or speak English, among many other obstacles that prevent them from advocating for their children. These children are the ones we are losing. Our children are worth more than a simple grade, and they deserve to be truly respected and valued like every human being. Thank you for listening to me.
Wow, thank you so much, Andrina. And Cecilia, thank you not only for all your work, but also sharing your personal story. I do truly appreciate it. And I know our board and community appreciates it as well. So thank you all. If we can go to the next slide, Derek. So real quick, just again, these 4 groups and these representatives all served on our steering committee with many other individuals, and just a snapshot of the amazing work you saw in those 4 slides or those 4 areas. All of those, if you can imagine, started out blank, and upon hours of conversations and planning and discussions, this is where we're at today. Ultimately, this is meant as a draft, just a communication and an update. Our next step, as many of the groups looked at, is to take and look at each one of those blank fields, if you will, to massage them, update them, get them ready to truly present to the board, and hopefully get to a position, not hopefully, we will get to a position where we're in the adoption phase, we can bring to the board and have a recommendation for the board to consider. Our target right now is a January board meeting. To be quite honest, we don't know with the holidays coming up, it might be a month out from that, but I know from the voices I've heard, the dedication and the commitment to see this through, to do it right and bring a final product to the board will be within the next 2 months. So with that said, I want to once again thank everyone, all of our representatives that are here tonight, and everyone that was involved in the entire process. And lastly, as I hand it back over to Andreas, I want to recognize that Andrea, Sahar, and Aaron were they're the board representatives and all had a voice and were part of this process as well and spent a lot of time with us throughout this process. So again, thank you to all the representatives, thank you to the board, and we look forward to bringing you a more polished process as we go. And Andrea, I'll hand it back to you.
Great. Thanks, Ken. I just want to echo and articulate how much I appreciate hearing the progress. I think, the strategic plan from the board's perspective has been something that we've been talking about for quite some time. And it's really exciting to see all of the folks involved and engaged and really being so thoughtful about the direction of our district in the next several years. So thank you so much for your testimony and for just really giving David Douglas some great representation and some really important conversations. So moving right along, the next item that we have is...
Andrea, could I make a comment only because this is the first I've heard the plan, and under communication, it was commented about in the upper grades being more student focused, which I'm not against, but I think it's really important, having been PTA president at that high school and vice president at middle school, that we also make sure it's unequal. I think of it as 3 stools: staff, student, and parent. If we're not careful and parents aren't included at that level, it will end up back way, as I saw in the early 80s, where parents didn't feel welcome at the upper grades. And we definitely don't want that to happen. We want them to be fully engaged and participating through their child's full educational experience. So it's just a comment from my own experience that yes, the students are very important, but the parents should have be pulled in there and feel welcome too in that area. Just my comment.
That's a good.
Can I just say, I wanted to just really say how much I appreciate the work that everybody is doing, and to know that all at the same time there is a facilities plan, a strategic plan, an equity plan, all being worked on, these monumental pieces that is going to make such a difference in our district, for our children, for our community, and with the potential of making it in our state and across the country. And I'm just really, I really am thankful and appreciative of being part of this and partnering with you all in this work. Because just listening to all of this tonight has just really struck me like, man, look at the breadth of what is going on in the midst of the craziness of the world we are living in right now. But I just really appreciate you all. Just wanted to say that.
Yay, here for appreciations. Love it.
I want to do thank Cece too. I think she's off already, but just for sharing the story of the struggles getting help for her son. I feel like it would be a very difficult topic to bring up, and I really appreciate her sharing how much struggle she's had, and how much she cares for her son and getting the kind of education that he deserves. So, thank you, Cece. And thank you everyone too for doing all this hard work on your own time, staff and parents alike. I really appreciate it.
Great. Moving along, the next item that we have is the auditor's report. This is an action item, and I will turn it over to Pat, who will then turn it over to our presenters this evening. We have Audit Associates of Polly Rogers, Leanne Hertel, and Michael Aloy. So if we can get those folks over in the queue, Derek, when you are able, and Pat, go ahead when you can.
I believe they're both over.
Oh, perfect. Lovely. Thank you. Pat, did you have any opening remarks before we turn it over?
So we have Michael and Leanne that worked on our audits, and they'll give you a report. And then we also have Laura Olson, who is the district's accounting manager, I believe also in the attendees if there's any questions. So I am going to turn it over to our auditors from Polly Rogers, Michael and Leanne.
Hello, I'm Leanne. I see Michael doesn't quite have his microphone on yet. There it goes.
Did that open up?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I am Michael Aloy. I'm a senior manager at Pauly Rogers and Company. We're the district's auditors. And I also am the compliance manager who reviewed the CAFR after the audit team was done. And we have Leanne from the audit team. Roy Rogers he's the managing partner at the firm and the signer on the account. He unfortunately couldn't be here, but he sends his regards. I'm going to go through what we call the board letter, but the board should have copies of the communication to the governing body. That's the 6-page letter that we send to the board after the audit's complete and the financial report has been issued. On the first page, under purpose of the audit in the middle, that's where we discuss what we're actually doing for the district. We're doing obviously a financial statement audit under generally accepted accounting principles and generally accepted auditing standards. We do that for all our financial audit reports. We also have a bullet point for Oregon municipal audit law and related administrative rules. That's the additional testing we do because you're a municipal entity, and the budget law requirements, we make sure that you're adhering to those. The third bullet point is federal, state, and other agency rules and regulations related to expenditures of federal awards. That's basically saying because you get over a certain dollar threshold in federal funding, you have to have additional testing on that. It's called a single audit, and your district gets this every year. So the bottom of that page into the top of the next page is just sort of background about our responsibilities and the timing of the audit. The results of what was found is in the middle of the second page. And you can see we have our 3 items there again. We've got the audit opinion letter. The district got an unmodified opinion on the basic financial statements. That means a clean opinion, no reservations, no findings. The second point, state minimum standards. That's the budget law and municipal audit law. We found no exceptions or issues requiring comment. That means, over expenditures, nothing like that. Federal awards, we found no issues of non-compliance and no question costs on the programs that we tested. And we review those based on basically the granting agencies decide what you test for on a particular grant. So that's what that's saying. The fourth point, management letter, no separate management letter was issued. That simply means you didn't get any findings that rose to the level of a significant deficiency or a material weakness in the financial statements. You didn't have anything like that. So this is basically, this would go next to if there was a dictionary for what's the audit report you want, that's what you want. And the rest of that page, let's see, there's a lot, the next couple of pages is really a lot of background about the audit process and, the things that we do. Starting the middle of page 4, we talk about other matters, future accounting and auditing issues. Every year we provide the upcoming GASB standards, Governmental Accounting Standards Board standards that are going to be implemented. So you can kind of keep up on what new rules are coming into place. It's a page and a half long now because we listed 4 of them, because with COVID now they're pushing back the implementation deadlines. You can see in the first sentence of each one, most of them aren't even starting next year, I think. So they're a little bit ways off, but these are the ones that are coming. They don't necessarily apply to every district, but we wanted you to be aware of them. And on the last page is just the signature of the partner. And usually in this spot is where we list what we call best practices, which are not findings, but they're suggestions that we would offer to the district to implement. And we have about 6 or 8 of them that are standard, plus others that come up during our testing. You'll notice you don't have any of them. We've worked with the district for a while now, and everything's been addressed that we could possibly come up with, and everything we would implement has been looked at. So there's not even a best practice section. So let's see. I just want to say, you know, as the compliance manager, I'm not part of the audit team, but I read the entire, I do the detailed, the technical review of the entire CAFR. There's so many disclosures now, it's pushing almost 200 pages long. And, you know, I went through it and there were very little corrections, very little changes. The team does an amazing job. I guess, Leanne, if you want to chime in with anything?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate and really thank your team, Laura Olson, and the people who are working with her to get all this taken care of. It is especially challenging this year with the whole COVID. It means we couldn't do site visits. So not only are your staff pulling all the paperwork for us, but they then have to scan it and get it all on the computer and stuff for us to look at as well. So it does add more hours and more labor, and thank you very much for all the hard work.
Yeah, I think that should be emphasized only because we've been doing this for years. We have a system set up of what we do in person and what we do remotely, and there's a process we go through, and everything just got thrown up in the air this year. We're doing a lot of steps out of order, but the district has worked with us very well, and we got everything done pretty much on the same timetable, I would think, that we usually do. Does anybody have any questions for us? No? Okay. Yeah, nope, we don't see any concerns. So it was a very good year again.
I'd like to just make comment in all the years I've been on the board. I don't think I've ever seen one where we didn't get a management letter.
Oh, wow.
I tried to put in a board recommendation in there for you, but they said you did too well.
Yep, it would seem like there was nothing that needed to be, you know, conveyed to the board that you didn't already know. So you guys have been obviously involved and dealing with everything that we can think of. So that should be congratulated for that, all of you.
So I just want to jump in. Thank you, Michael and Leanne. Really appreciate all your work and being here tonight. But I also want to recognize to our board, if you don't know, Laura Olson's on the call as well. You might see her, and she's one of our staff in the business office, one of Pat's team that spends tremendous amount of hours and ultimately is at the lead and point for this clean audit, although it's Pat and many other of her team as well. But thank you, Laura, for being here. Thank you for all your work. Really appreciate it. And to Pat and team and everyone that involved, truly appreciate the confidence in business office, and our financials helps us to do our mission, which is ultimately high achievement for all kids. So thank you, Laura, and thank you for the auditors for being here this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. I'd just like to take a moment to recognize all of this was possible. It was a difficult year. Leanne and Michael, I know you guys had challenges. None of it would have been possible without the hard work and dedication of the whole business team. So I'd like to really recognize the whole office for everything that they've done. And thank you.
Hopefully next year I'll be able to be there in person to get some of it taken care of.
That'd be great.
Well, thank you all so much for your time and your thoughtfulness and flexibility in dealing with the pandemic and the impacts of COVID on your work. But we obviously really appreciate it, and especially are interested in the work of the auditor. So thank you so much. I'll let you know if we have any other questions. Okay, moving on. So
do we need to approve the?
Oh yes, thank
or
you.
accept the move. I
Actually,
move to accept the audit report, or approve the audit report. Accept the audit report.
I think it's moved to approve, right, Ken? You're on mute, but I think it's approval, right?
Yeah, ultimately accept, approve, it's the same, but yes.
I move
I'll
to accept.
second it.
Yeah.
Great. Stevens moves, Christopher seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Start with myself. Valderrama, I vote aye. Christopher?
Aye.
Muranovich?
Aye.
Barber?
Aye.
Stevens,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
and Barrow.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Stephanie. Okay, now that is done. We do have a break, but if folks are feeling okay, I would like to go ahead and move through that. And if we feel like we need one a little later, I'm happy to add one back in. But we can, if there are no objections, move right into the board policy item. This is a second reading, and I will turn it over back to our policy committee liaisons. We have Frida, Stephanie, and Donna.
Well, I don't know whether Donna wants to fill in. I basically at the first reading had put in all my comments and recommended changes. And I don't believe any other changes have been made since then.
Donna or Stephanie, did you all have any other comments or additions other than the amendments that we discussed last time?
No, I'm ready to move them. The deletion of 2 policies and the adoption of the new ones. Do I need to read them out one by one, or are there any questions before we do that?
I think you could probably say the list. But Donna, did you have a comment?
The only thing that I saw that kind of raised an issue for me, and it's not a big thing, but I think it was in the sexual harassment policy where it talked about posting signs. I kind of felt like I wanted it to be specified places. I saw the potential for there to be a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper somewhere back out of sight on a wall in a back office. And I know that's not the intention, but I don't know, for something that is as important and significant as this, what came to my mind as I was reading it is that it would include, say, being posted in locker rooms, lunch rooms, staff lounges, specifically, like places where it is definitely where those things where offenses may happen and where the most people can see it. But that was the only thing that came to my only note I made.
Just a question of Ken on that, because I know when my previous job, we had legally specific places that we had to post. Is that the same case here, Ken?
I don't think it calls out legally. We do post many places, but 2 things we can do. We could wordsmith and make sure it's added in right now, or we could pull those. I mean, there's not a rush. We could pull those. We could make sure to get them in and bring them back next time and really make sure that we meet the needs. I love the catch, and I think the more specific we can be, the better. Stephanie also mentioned the AR. We can see if there is an AR to that, and if not, again, I don't have that in front of me. Whether we do, actually, I can pull it up on our policy page because it might have in the AR, it might be listed, but if not, we can make sure it's listed in the policy.
Okay, thank you.
So
I think it'd be worth taking a look, since people aren't in the building right now, to do it and do it right. And, this has been a priority of the students, as we know, as well. So I'd be okay, I guess, pulling those if it means that we can take a closer look.
Yeah, I mean, I am willing to support the recommendation of you all. So if you don't feel like there is a rush, and you, I think to your point too, want to compare with the AR too, then I'm happy to make sure it's included on the January agenda.
We don't need to list all these out, do we? Can we make a motion just to approve the current
As
board
listed.
policy, new policies, except for GBN, JBA, personnel sexual harassment, and GBA, JBA, GBN student sexual harassment.
Frida for the win. Yes, I think that's perfect. All right. So I think if we're okay with that, move.
Second.
Stephanie seconds. Great. Any further discussion to clarify? What we are doing is the rest of the list, both current and new policy, we will be approving now, with the 2 policies that Frida mentioned to be pulled and approved for next month. We'll go ahead and move into a roll call vote. I will start. Valderrama, I vote aye. Christopher?
Aye.
Barber?
Aye.
Milanovich?
Aye.
Stevens?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
And Barrow.
Aye.
Excellent. The next item that we have are the OSBA elections. This is an action item, and you all should have gotten information in your packets regarding the ballot specifically and who is on it. A refresher, there are 2 candidates, candidate positions, position 17. Candidates there are Katrina Dottie and Michael Sonletnyer, and position 19 is Sonia McKenzie. So the action item is a resolution to adopt the 2021-2022 legislative priorities and principles as recommended by the Legislative Policy Committee. So I think, we usually do this in written format. So I'm just trying to figure out, maybe it might be helpful to get the ballot up on the screen, perhaps, and we can talk through it that way. How do folks feel about that?
Yeah, let me just pull that right up here in just a second.
Thank you.
And Ken and Lori, do we then go through and each one and nominate and then do a roll call?
We've done it multiple ways in the past, but yeah, typically we look at it, nominate, have a vote, and if it ties, then we go on. Specifically with these, I don't know that we've ever had too big of a tie, but that's kind of how it starts with a nomination.
Yeah, I guess I'm just looking at it. Let's see, we'll start with this one, position 17. Since they're both already on the ballot, I don't think that it makes sense for nominations. What I could probably just do, if folks are okay, is just doing a roll call vote, and you can tell me of these 4, Katrina, Michael abstain, or no action, which one you want to vote for, and then we can do it that way. How does that sound for folks? I know it's a little strange. Can't really see everyone's face, which kind of sucks, but we'll just have to do it this way. Okay. The order has changed slightly since you all are on the top of my screen as opposed to all of the squares. So I guess I can start, and I'll just say, this. So this was, I have to say, a hard choice for me. I know both candidates. I think we heard from one of them today. Really powerful testimony and just great leadership overall. It's really exciting to see more folks engaged in the OSBA leadership level, and especially as a board member of color, just to see folks really think more critically about how we can build power this way. I think, all that being said, for me, Katrina really had a lot of great high points, and so tonight I'll be casting my vote for Katrina. And I will move it over. The next person is Frida.
I'm going to cast my vote for Michael. He did a good job and a very thoughtful that there should be someone from one of the community colleges on that board if they're included within OSBA and decisions are made about the community colleges in this way. So I'm going to cast my vote for Michael.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I lost you for a minute. Sahar.
Yeah, thank you to both candidates. Again, it is exciting to see more folks running for these OSBA positions. My vote is for Katrina Dowdy.
Stephanie?
I am going with Katrina Dowdy.
Okay, I have Donna next.
My vote is for Katrina Dowdy.
Christine?
I do think that both of the candidates do have a lot to offer, and I appreciate that both of them want to do this, but I will vote for Katrina Dowdy as well.
All right, and Aaron?
Katrina Dowdy.
Great. So as a kind of recap, it looks like we had 6 for Katrina, 1 for Michael, and no abstentions or decisions to have no action taken. So we will move forward as a board collectively for Katrina for the position 17. For, let's see, position 18, nothing there. It says no election. If you can scroll down a little bit, thank you, Derek. For position 19, there is 1 person there, Sonia McKenzie. I'm a little confused because this one is slightly different. It doesn't have the no action or abstention option. So I will just run through quickly. I am in favor of voting for Sonia. For some reason, the squares keep moving. Donna, you're next.
I vote for Sonia McKenzie.
Okay, Sahar.
Sonia McKenzie, absolutely.
Stephanie.
Sonia McKenzie.
Christine.
Sonia McKenzie.
Aaron.
I'm going to abstain just because I don't know the candidate. I haven't heard from her.
Okay, thank you. And Frida?
I do know Sonia and I'll vote for her.
Great. Okay, so for the record, we had 6 in favor of Sonia and 1 abstention. Total, that means that we will go ahead and vote for Sonia as a school board from Park Rose. The next item that we have is a different decision. This is the adoption of the proposed 2021-2022 OSBA legislative priorities. Derek, if you could switch the materials or the presentation to that resolution, you all, colleagues, you should have gotten this in your packets as well, but I can put it in the chat or we can wait until it goes up. This would be...
Do you have the link, Andrea?
Yeah, I just actually put it in the chat.
Okay. Thank you.
Shout out to Lori, always keeping us organized. Thank you for that. But I just wanted to make sure we were getting it up on the screen just for a bit. This lays out all of the legislative priorities for OSBA for the upcoming school year. And then we can take a vote. So the resolution, we can skip through that. I think the page 2 is where the actual priorities, or excuse me, page 3. So just to quickly go over, protecting the Student Success Act continues to be a top priority, making sure we have stable resources, closing the opportunity gap, contain cost drivers, really a lot of budget related items here. We have great lobbying support and access from OSBA. So these will be all of the items that they then will be taking to Salem to fight on our behalf and students' behalf. Go ahead and move down to the next page. Here are some of the principles and guiding principles used in identifying this agenda. So we can go ahead and take the presentation down. You all can take a look a little bit more if necessary, but at this point, I will call for a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
Seconded.
Great. So Frida moved to approve the resolution to adopt the OSBA 2021-2022 legislative priorities. And Sahar seconded.
I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
Before we vote.
Go ahead.
While I think all of these, this list of things are all important things, you know, tonight was a good example of we are very interested in diversity, equity, inclusion, and you don't see a lot of that in here. And I find that disappointing. So I know we're part of OSBA, and so we need to communicate with our leaders in OSBA that this needs to be something that's included in this sort of thing with the state. You know, we definitely, I think, have a lot of good things going on in our district. And we can't be I know other districts are doing their part or trying to, but I think the state needs to provide some more leadership in this area and some money to go with it. That's all.
I love it. Yes, totally second Christine's comments. Any other discussion before we vote?
I just want to back up what you said, Christine. I read through this yesterday and I felt the same way reading through it. So thank you for speaking out. You know.
Great. Okay, I will start us off. Valderrama, I vote aye. Christopher.
Aye.
Barber.
I'm sorry, I was torn between abstaining and saying nay, because I think that's a big thing. So I would say nay.
Okay, Mlinovich.
Aye.
Stevens.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
And Barrow.
Nay.
Great. Thank you.
I think what Christine said is important, and we should send some comments to them. Their focus on the legislative agenda is very financially focused versus looking at equity and those things, but it doesn't mean they can't broaden their focus on what they're going to advocate for.
Absolutely. I agree. So it sounds like the resolution is moved, is passed, and if folks are okay, we also want to include some language stating our disappointment in, or I think the need that we feel in including more explicit advocacy policy and resources around DEI work. Does that sound? I see a thumbs up. Great. Okay. So we will make sure that is included in the responses back and in the information about the resolution. Okay. Thank you. I love it. And I just want to say, I just really appreciate the thoughtfulness of you all in prioritizing what we've been hearing a long time is a need for our district. So thank you. Moving along, we have a couple reports. A financial report, we will start off, close us out with the superintendent's report. Go ahead, Pat, with the financial report when you are ready.
Okay, I will try to be very brief. Updating you on the state forecast from November, it very much mirrored the September forecast. Still looking good for this year, which is good news. Probably the bigger thing is that there still is concern about future biennia. And the other thing to note is the governor's budget was released last week. And disappointingly, it was at 9.1 billion. As a reminder, we're at 9 billion. So that does not allow really for much inflation, if any. And so we will probably be seeing a lot in the legislative session regarding how to rectify that. The reason that they felt that 9.1 was accurate is that they feel like there is a large amount due to the anticipated reductions of PERS rates. When we've talked with the legislative fiscal office, we often disagree about how some of the calculations are made there. And so we will continue to work with them on understanding how what they may perceive is not necessarily accurate, because they don't always take into account things like those of us who have side accounts and we have to pay bonds. So it's often interesting. It's an often interesting discussion and debate. For this year, I just want to bring to your attention 2 items. General fund is still projected at about 16.6. I do expect that to go up. And unfortunately, as this pandemic continues, you know, we aren't spending as much, and we probably will see that our reduced spending will increase our ending fund balance. I did include in that an anticipated transfer for nutrition services, and this was based on last year. But I do want to bring to your attention, as we started rolling out, if you recall, September was kind of a mess as far as school was concerned. And so we started a little late, and meal service and whatnot. We just began dinner program in November. We are not seeing as much participation as we would like to see. And it is taking more labor trying to get those meals together. We serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner together. So unfortunately, I am projecting a deficit at this time, and it's about 360,000 for this year. That's anticipating that at some point we go back to school. I can see that growing again up to that 600 or 700,000 level this year. So I know that there's been a lot of discussion at the state level on this and trying to figure out how to cover these costs, because the amount that we get through the federal program doesn't cover everything. So we will keep you apprised, and we'll be digging into how we can reduce some costs from, you know, do we need to look at things more prepackaged? Do we need to look at things that are more streamlined and putting together? And we'll bring you an update next month. Any questions?
Pat, I don't know if you're seeing the chat, but I can read a question from Stephanie. She's asking, so our nutritional services fund deficit is going to be 1 million total. Does this come out of the ending fund balance?
Yeah, so it comes out of general fund. So we need to figure out how, yep, that'll get paid. And I see Aaron's comment about a presentation on food services. And I know we've talked about that. We just haven't scheduled anything regarding, and I see there's a question on food waste. And so we can discuss that too when we do a presentation.
I think if you do the presentation also, are we getting the word out enough that the school district is free meals for all children? Because I think a lot of parents don't even realize they can take advantage of it. I've had a few say they wanted to make sure the kids who really need it got it, and then I had to explain to it, no, we're making enough for everyone. So if your children can get those meals and stuff. So so there might be a communication thing we could do a little more of to boost those numbers.
Similarly, I wondered about if it would help to do more communication specifically around the dinner piece. I'm sure things have gone out, but I'm wondering if that can just be reiterated a bit and if that might also help some.
Yes, we're going to look at that also. And then we also are looking at kind of what's being served. And it's a little difficult to tell on what's being served and what's popular when we have a large day versus, is something about the weather affecting when people come out? Because if it's not very nice outside, people may not want to drive down or walk down and get meals. So
I'd love to see a survey of parents who have been having their kids pick up the lunches. I know we stopped picking them up for a big portion of the week just because we have like 30 packages of dried cranberries in our pantry because the kids have got sick of them about 3 months ago. And it's just, I think some of the menu choices have been kind of seem a little repetitive. So I'd like to see somehow if we can get some widespread feedback from our parents and kids and see sort of what the barriers are for them. I know what they are for our family, but just seeing what other families say.
We can work on that.
Cool.
How much flexibility do we have in terms of menu choices? How open is it towards the families, speaking about what they would like to see or, what they really appreciate or what they would really hate? Like, is there much flexibility there?
There's a little flexibility. There are certain requirements that, may or may not make sense to some folks because of the way that the program is structured. And so I'd really like Jody, our nutrition services manager, to come in and kind of talk to you about that. Because I know in prior years, even when we had school, there was some discussion about what's served. Some things I think folks aren't aware how many options, especially like at the high school, were available. But there are some restrictions that at some point, they want, I don't want to say zero salt, but practically nothing. And if you cook, you do put a little salt in there to enhance flavor. And so sometimes those goals I think were a little restrictive and maybe not how I would say the majority of America may eat. But we do try to focus a lot on fresh fruits and vegetables and things of that nature. But I'll get that for you because we did have some questions that I know Frida brought forward during the spring and answering some questions on like why do we serve yogurt and this and but we can do that and get that presentation ready for you. And we did do a survey earlier in the fall, but we can definitely do a follow-up.
Thanks, Pat. I really appreciate. Oh, sorry, Donna. Didn't mean to.
Oh, I was just going to ask, and also how much does the diversity of our district, how much that is considered in the menu choices that may differ from other school districts because of the unique makeup of our particular district.
I also wonder too if there are vegetarian and vegan options. Maybe that's something I should ask when we pick up their lunches next time, just out of curiosity. But I would love to hear that presentation. I know that there's a lot of state requirements that go into the menu choices, and so it'd be interesting to see how much influence the state's having on what our children are being served. Thanks again, Pat.
You bet. And those are actually more federal requirements than state requirements. The state has to ensure the federal requirements are met. So.
Okay, it's good to know. Yeah.
So just as a quick follow-up, we're hearing communication. We're hearing getting feedback, survey, somehow how we get feedback, and then ultimately presentation to the board. And that has been something that's been on the list, and we just haven't made it a priority, but we can, will, should. I think this goes all the way back even to my evaluation. There was a question or comment about doing or wanting to see a food presentation. So it's something that I've discussed with Pat and Jody, and I will definitely talk to Andrea or share with Andrea and Sahar, and we'll flag it for in the next couple months, maybe next month, but obviously I'll follow their lead on that. With all that said, I want to recognize that our food service being in the red, I think, is more reflective of the situation with COVID. And the reason I'm saying that is the data is that the previous years that we've been in the black. And that's something that I'm actually very proud of our food service around. Not saying it can't get better as far as meals and what we do and how and selections, but the part of it being deficit format is more related to the COVID piece and what's happening and how the system's operated. Pat and I also talked this week about drafting, and we're going to be drafting a letter to Senator Wyden's office and Senator Merkley's office just to flag for them and ask for support. I don't know that they have a magic wand, but I do know this is not just a David Douglas issue. This is something that when I have the opportunity to meet with superintendents, it's at least countywide, because that's who I meet with the most, but just kind of a heads up on all of that. So thank you so much for the feedback. Pat, did you have more on your report?
Nope, I did not. And yes, Jody is a little upset that her fund is in the red because she's been pretty proud that it has not been. So
Tell her we appreciate her very, very much.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you, Pat. We appreciate it. And I will definitely connect with Ken about a presentation. I think it's a good reminder, and absolutely, I agree, something that we should hear about and talk about. Okay. The last but not least item that we have is our superintendent's report. So go ahead and take it away, Ken.
Great, Andrea. So real quick here, I will be brief. I'll be tight. I know we intentionally moved these reports to the end because there are different ways that I can communicate through email and other, and obviously it's kind of late and we all get a little distracted, but there are a few things I want to talk about and make sure that you understand the direction we're going, and some of it's related to what we discussed this evening throughout the board meeting. So real quick, just thinking about from this had to do with a presentation I received from ODE, Colt Gill, and then ultimately, you know, his direct supervisor, if you will, is our governor. So with that said, just real quickly looking at a look back and a look ahead. And the reason I'm bringing this up to our board team is just a reminder of, you know, there are some uncertainties. And right now as a board, we've made the board's made the decision that we are in comprehensive distance learning, or CDL, until January 28th. I know last board meeting, the board discussed the possibility of extending that. There's a number of different conversations related there, but I just wanted to share with you, if you look back, reminder of the daily case counts, looking back in October, where we were at, how it was starting to climb. Reminder, the end of October, we updated metrics, or our state updated the metrics and the changes that made. And at that time, when those changes were made, we would have been allowed to come back to school based on the numbers. When those changes were made, when you looked at the numbers, we were really close. And then obviously we spiked, right? And we're still spiking. And that wave, whatever you want to call it, you know, if you look at through November 30th, we're up over 1,300 a day plus. And then finally that December 3rd piece, looking at the projections back on November 3rd, is there the possibility of breaking 2,000 cases where we're at. I don't think any of us has a crystal ball. I know all of us are trying to follow the science as much as we can. But the reality is where we're at today, even when we get to January 28th and we say, okay, that is our action through that time of CDL, we might not be in the position where the metrics say we can come back. So that's just reality. I think we decided as a team that in January, we'll kind of review that again. We'll review this data, see if things go better or worse, or where we're at, and determine if we may need to extend that CDL piece. But if you want to go to the next slide, Derek, related to these is what's next is kind of, I wanted to flag here, is the governor's goal to have in-person options for students beginning February 1. You guys might have seen this in the news outlets. She's kind of made the statement, what she's looking at. I haven't gotten any more than this statement. And I think I shared it with you in my update email. You know, is this based on science? Is this based on vaccine? Or is this just hopefulness that we all want our students back in school? So I'm not sure where we're at with it, but there's definitely, she's putting a target out there February 1st, which would be great. I just don't know how realistic it is at this time based on the case count and where we're at. The second bullet you can kind of ignore. That has to do with more with some of our smaller counties and the safe harbor piece. But the reality, the following one, you'll see some of the upcoming guidance is that continuing confirmation that school sites and protocols in place are low, or with protocols, excuse me, are low transmission sites. So that's part of the push of getting our schools open. The impact of testing strategies, the reality, the more tests we get and kind of getting the strategy piece in place, the impact and timing for educator vaccination, the reality that our governor has stated that she's going to make educators a priority to be vaccinated. The idea of the possibility of adjusting a school calendar, thinking about summer school, thinking about what that looks like. Is that part of this year or next year? We're really extending the year for the students and any kind of learning loss. And then finally, again, it's kind of through there is different grants and how we go through that process. So I'm not sharing this with anything other than a reminder to us that at January 28th is kind of our date. But even if we hit January 28th and our metrics are still above, we couldn't open. If we see the beginning of metrics, our metrics are beginning of January, the metrics are trending down, then we can talk about the possibility and planning. Right now, we're in the process of planning for hybrid. We're going through that process as a cabinet. We're starting to communicate with our administrators, and we want to develop RSSL committees, basically our safe schools and safe learner committees in which we get staff and community involved as well. Because if our metrics do at some point hit the point where we can return, what does hybrid look like? How do we make it happen? Obviously, many questions on how we could do it and how we do it safely. So just wanted the board to know we're in those conversations and kind of looking at that. The second piece of that I wanted to make sure the board was aware of has to do with sports activities and just general what we can allow. And you heard some of that this evening, and I sent that as well as writing, is that we are allowed, based on the Oregon Health Authority, we are allowed, we meet all the criteria, we can have outdoor activities. We can have activities. For example, we can have sports and conditioning with our sports teams. We can go through that process. There are very strict restrictions and requirements, from masks to no more than 50 to targeting and the communication. And anyway, the entire process, I want the board to know that we are starting to look at that process. In fact, we have a draft plan in place, and our hope is that by January 11th, we have a system in place where our schools are back on site outdoors, or excuse me, our kids and groups of kids are on site outdoors. It's only outdoors. We don't meet the metrics to be indoors in any shape or form, but we do meet the metrics to be outdoors. So we're starting to go through that process. The reason I'm flagging that is it's not really a board action, but I do want to respect the board. And if there's any board members or a team of board members that say absolutely not, I just want to hear that and make sure that that voice is heard, because that's the direction we're going. Out of all of it, I think it's the right thing to do. I think having our students back on campus in a safe format, following the requirements of the state, is essential. I think not only it helps their physical, but their mental health. And you heard not just sports, you heard our band director this evening, along with other groups and clubs that might take advantage of that. The biggest red flag with it, the biggest red flag, other than the safety and not wanting anyone to get hurt out of this, is that we do not have any comprehensive insurance, right? We do not have any coverage with COVID, right? That's something that's basically statewide, nationwide. We do not have any issues. If something happened with COVID and there was some sort of litigation brought our way, we would not be covered. So there's definitely risk there, although there are waivers, there's a whole process that we would go through, but I do want the board to understand that as well. As it was shared, Christina shared, Portland Public Schools actually has activities in sports conditioning open now. North Clackamas Schools has sports and activities open now, again, outdoors. Oregon Trail, does. My understanding is Gresham Barlow is kind of where we're at. They're looking at it and planning on opening, and Centennial and Park Rose and Reynolds, I think, are still in the discussion mode. So again, I wanted the board to hear that's the direction we're moving as a district, and just provide an opportunity if you have any questions or you want to flag anything for me to research as we continue to move forward. I guess I just want to open that up. Yes,
Yep.
Stephanie.
We had a one presentation today, which was really great to hear from an educator. I would like to know, how our unions and our staff are feeling about that. The folks who run those programs, and what you're hearing from them as far as like their feelings around safety. And I feel like they should have a say in youth are not the ones ending up in the hospital.
Yeah, that is a great question, Stephanie. We did have a presentation. We also had some written testimony that was submitted that was related to that as well. And my understanding is a majority of our coaches are very interested in this, getting back. I don't want to speak for, because I'm not going to say 100% of our coaches, because some of them might be in a different situation with their health. And I do know that we're not going to mandate it. We're not going to tell a coach you have to be there. We'll be very open in the process. Our athletic director was kind of waiting for this conversation. His plan is next week to reach out to coaches, kind of go through this plan with them, make sure there's a comfort level involved with that. And then we're kind of on break, obviously, with the winter break. And then the first week we're back January 4th, start up again with communication, going through the planning process, get trained, make sure all the safety protocols are in place. And we're looking at a January 11th kickoff date. But there could be coaches that opt out. There could be coaches that, unfortunately, due to their situation, it isn't the safest thing for them to be doing this, and others. It's not going to be a mandate. It's more of an opportunity. And in our case, it's going to be conditioning camps. I know I'm focusing on sports right now, but it's not going to be leveled practices or a teams meeting. It's going to be more cohorted by grade level, where kids can come together and do conditioning to prepare for what OSAA came out with. Is February 8th. They're looking at the first season started. So what we're trying to do is bring kids together to do some conditioning, do some drills to get them up to speed. So when athletics do start, if they can start, our kids are ready for it. So they're not coming in cold. So I don't have a formal, Stephanie, I can't tell you that 98% of our coaches said yes or nay or yay. We're still in that process, and that's going to be most next week. But the feedback I've gotten from our AD is most of them are saying, hey, how can we get in front of our kids? How can we help support our kids? Yes, it's all outdoors, Stephanie. Every activity we're talking about, we are not allowed indoors with students.
No. I was modifying my above statement, which is, Is this just district employees, or are we talking Sun services or anything like that? All activities or just sports?
Right now,
I don't know. I guess I just want more information, but we don't have it yet, and it's all theoretical. So maybe
Yeah. Right now, I'm just talking specifically OSAA sports and activities. That's all I'm talking about. So I have not discussed at all with any Sun schools. I think that's the direction we're going and looking at. There might be a time where they pull students together to do certain things. But right now, the conversation's directly related to OSAA sports and activities.
Ken, I have a question, and it relates to your previous slide regarding vaccine and everything we're hearing. It sounds like the first one's going to be approved tomorrow. Have we surveyed our staff to find out how willing they are to be vaccinated? Because it seems like to me, if we can get our staff all vaccinated, we're more likely to be able to move the kids into school, because the staff wouldn't be at risk, and kids have a lot lower risk.
Yeah, great question. No, we have not. That's kind of the process for us. One of those hurdles. If you think about, hey, we're looking at hybrid, and possibly in February, we're coming back in a hybrid format. There's a lot of work we need to do around vaccination, around do we have staff available? How many families will choose not to return their students? Will choose to keep their students at home? So now that we have a 2-track system, but to answer your question on point, Frida, no, we don't know that information yet. Again, we're just starting the conversations around planning and going through a process. And obviously, OEA is going to have a very big voice in this whole process, right?
Well, also, it seems like we should be reaching out to the county to see if the governor is going to prioritize teachers, what they can do to make it easier for us to, for our staff to be vaccinated. We're lucky to have the clinic right there for as a means to get them vaccinated. But it seems like that's another outreach you need to do regarding vaccinations.
Yeah, and it really depends on which vaccine we get first. The Pfizer vaccine needs to be kept at minus 92 degrees. And so we would not be able to give that in our school-based health center. They would need to go to a centralized source where somebody has, like OHSU, where they keep those kinds of freezers around. My understanding is the state's going to get about 160,000 doses of vaccine initially, and they're going to be targeted for frontline healthcare workers and long-term care homes. Is what my understanding is of the first batch that gets them. Once the state gets the Moderna vaccine, that one can be kept at minus 20 degrees, and that one will be one that can be distributed at health clinics because that's just like a regular freezer kind of situation.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get anything before teachers before the Moderna one.
Well, no,
So-
I don't either.
Yeah, obviously Christine's much more educated in this, and I want to be absolutely clear here. All this is a statement from Colt Gill and the governor. This is not David Douglas planning to vaccine all our teachers. We have not even discussed that yet. I have no idea how it's going to roll out. All I know is the governor said she's going to prioritize teachers. There's a lot of conversations that need to happen before we ever even get to that point. And when prioritizing teachers, what does that even look like? As Christine said, when will it be available or not? I don't know. But the very first step before we got anywhere around the vaccinations would be, once it is available, like I said, from OEA to DDEA, there's a lot of, to OSEA, there'll be sit down conversations so we understand what this is about, how it plays out. Stephanie, I think you're talking about the vaccination and not the activities and sports. But
No, I actually am talking about activities and sports. I feel that as a board, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the district, and I wouldn't be comfortable having administration move forward on sports and activities without a conversation and a vote of the board. I feel strongly about that. So I may be the only one, but that's my position.
Got it. Well, that's why I brought it up. That's why I wanted to make sure and I wanted to hear. And with that, we'll bring it January for action from the board or consideration, I should say.
I have a comment and a question, if that's okay. The comment is, I understand how healthy, what a great thing it would be for our kids to be able to participate in sports activities. But the thing that's giving me pause is what happened with the NFL and all the protections they put in place for their players. I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars in testing and clinic visits and medical help, and they still have this massive outbreak of COVID among their players. It's really kind of gives me pause just thinking about that. I'm sorry, that was just a statement. The question I had, though, is Biden came out and said that one of his top 3 priorities in the first 100 days in office is to get kids back in school. And I wonder how much pressure that's going to put on the state and us as a district to get kids back into class, even if it's not safe to do so, or we don't feel like it's safe.
Yeah, I saw the same press release or information or statement. As I read deeper into that, I believe I read in kind of access to schools and limited. So I don't know if he was necessarily saying that everyone's going to be back in school. But again, I could be totally wrong. I can't tell what his intent was on that errand. And I don't know. I don't know, for example, our governor's saying February 1. I don't know him saying, we're going to do it. I just don't know. If you're asking me to project, I can't see it. I can't imagine it on that timeline and time frame based on the current wave we're in, based on the numbers, based on the increases. Unless our state was to change the metrics, here's where I'm at. I think safety is our number 1 priority. Has to be. Obviously, education is our work and our mission, but if our students aren't safe coming back into schools along with our staff and families, then that we got to take it one measured step at a time. So we are not in any kind of rush as a district. I can tell you, it's not about hurry. There's nothing that I want more, and I know our teachers want more, and our classified personnel want more, and I'm sure our board to have our kids back in our buildings, brick and mortar face-to-face instruction. But at this point, based on what I'm hearing, the science, what the Oregon Health Authority has established as the metrics, we do not meet those. And in fact, we got communication, we received communication from Multnomah County as well, that we can't even explore limited in-person instruction at this time. So the reality is we know we're in CDL. We need to continue to do the best we can at it. I just wanted to communicate to the board that we're starting the process, the plan for hybrid, because possibly in February, possibly in March, possibly after spring break. I mean, maybe this summer. Again, the governor and our legislature might say this summer we're coming back in some shape or form. So I want us to be prepared and go through all those tabletop exercises to make sure that we do have a safe process in place. But again, I know as the superintendent, I'm not quote unquote in a hurry or any kind of rush. There's a lot of work we need to do here in conversations with our staff that we're just now starting. We're just now connecting with and networking. So I just wanted you to share what was coming out of the governor's office, and then really focus on, I wanted to give an opportunity for feedback on the sports, athletics, and activities. And again, I just heard the direction there, which we'll follow and make sure that we come up and follow through in January. And from there, I'll stop again to make sure there's not any other questions, and then I'll go to the next couple slides. So are there any other questions? Yeah.
I don't have a question necessarily, but I do have a comment. When it comes to, deciding if we're gonna do hybrid learning or continue on the CDL, after talking to some of, the students at David Douglas, and I'm gonna go back and, kind of talk to more and get more of a inside, I guess. But I feel like it would be a lot more beneficial to kind of just plan ahead for the rest of the school year, if that makes sense. A lot of students feel as though like it would be easier to kind of know what the rest of their school year looks like rather than, the next 3 months or the next 2 months, so they can know how to plan ahead. And I feel like a lot of people have already gotten used to the whole online learning, which, don't get me wrong, I would love to be back in person, and I know a lot of other people would as well. But it would just make things a little bit easier, I think.
Thank you so much, Christina. I understand that, and I believe, I don't want to speak for the board, but I know they're very interested in that continuity and trying to give as much, dates in advance. I think that the fear is if we say we're in CDL for the rest of the year and then we find out in spring, wow, we can get kids back. Other than we could always possibly change. So, but I think that is so important, and I know I've heard our board talk about that as well, is that we need to make sure that we're given enough time and communication so people can have plans and kind of iron in. One of the biggest difficulties, I believe, with COVID is the uncertainty, right? The uncertainty and just kind of that struggle internally is tough, and I'm sure it's very hard on all of our students. So that is a great perspective, Christina. Thank you so much.
Sorry, if I could add just one more thing. Also, one of the things that, I discussed this with some of the students in one of my classes, but if we were to go back, I feel like it would be a little bit confusing for kids to get used to. And I know that, we still have a lot of planning ahead, and, we're going to get everything figured out. But depending on if it were hybrid or not, well, it would be hybrid, but some kids might get a little bit confused with like, oh, I'm going to school on Mondays, but then I have to be online Tuesdays or stuff like that. So I just want to make sure, if like when planning that, to make sure it's very clear. Sorry, I'm trying to think of the right words to use here, but yeah.
No, you're doing great, Christina, and your feedback is spot on. And those are a lot of the same questions when just thinking about planning. It's almost overwhelming, right? It really is. Thinking about the measures and how we do it and do it right is very important. So one step at a time, and that's why I want to make sure, again, this slide is not to imply that we're opening up February 1st. That was not why I showed this. So I apologize if there was any kind of confusion. It was just kind of the target and the direction of the conversation Where we're at is we're in CDL. And again, reminder to Christina and everyone else that's listening, it's not necessarily that we choose one way or the other. Right now, we couldn't be in hybrid if we wanted to. We don't meet the health metrics, right? So that's what we're trying to follow through the Oregon Health Authority and our county health department. And if and when numbers trend down and they're in a position where safety, that's when we want to make sure we have a plan in place. So thank you again for your feedback. That's so important.
Yeah, thank you.
I also just jump in and say I really appreciate that, Christina. And I know from the conversations that I've heard from parents as well, I just hear loud and clear consistency and as much information and as long-term planning as we can provide for folks is what they're asking for. And me personally, I also would love to see that as a parent, right, juggling the homeschooling and remote work as well. For me, while I fully understand that we're not able to move into hybrid even now, and that obviously we want to continue to stay in compliance, I think that feedback and experiences of our district student staff and parents is also really important. And so I don't want us to be so tied to that either. If folks feel like they want to explore how to continue to be safe and how to do that, within, what is working better perhaps or not. And so I just wanted to share that. I think, the obviously the health guidelines are things that are critical for us. And also I think we're all just learning together. And I think doing what we can to make sure that we get it right.
Perfect. Any other? I'm going to move us along unless we want to continue to discuss. If you want to go to the next slide, Derek, and I only have about 2 slides left, and I'll be quick. Really, it's just the possible legislative priorities. I know you discussed them through OSBA and looked at those in COSA and superintendents and administrators. We also look at priorities, and I just wanted to flag those so you have an idea of what the state superintendents are looking at. Again, I'll be very quick with these and I'll follow up with an email. But the number one thing there is the state school fund. You heard Pat talk about it. The governor's recommended budget, GRB, she's looking at $9.1 billion. We're looking at advocating for 9.5. That's, we believe, our current service level. Again, if we're flat funded, that obviously takes a toll on kids. So specifically, that's kind of the number we're looking at and targeting right now. Student Success Act investment, we're still asking for full funding, which in GRB it is, which is great, but kind of that targeted equity investments as well, the grow your own program, some of the things we've advocated for and fought for in the last legislative session, we're hoping to grow and build upon. I won't read the last 3 there, but there is a lot of talk at the superintendent level when we're talking about our legislative priorities. It is advancing equity. Making sure that the SIA is equity focused and those investments are targeted for what they were meant to be targeted for. And then the next bullet, I think this board will find interesting as we're going into some committee work next week, is protecting educator diversity with looming budget cuts. The reality is, there anything we can do at the legislative level when we talk about reduction in force, and most contracts are last hired or first out? Is there any processes we can do to change that? So that's not just at our district level, looking at a state level, elevating student leadership, student voice, mandating school board member and superintendent trainings. So looking at better training for our superintendents, and then a lot more linguistic inclusion. Derek, next slide, and this will be the last slide, you guys. The other stuff I submitted in writing already, but a few others is just the reality around COVID. Thinking about the liability, I just brought this up. The reality is the insurance. Hopefully, our legislature has been talking about a special session. At one point, they were talking about meeting next week. I don't think that's happening. They're still exploring it. I believe the governor is even looking at what's called, I believe, a critical special session. But one of the main topics to that special session is that liability, is to make sure that we have protections so we can move forward with opening when we can, because right now we don't have that insurance safety. The wildfire piece, there's many districts in our state, broadband, the reality is in our state, there's a lot of needs there that became so apparent. And then finally, some of the issues around open carry, some of the mandates like PE instruction minutes, and then OEBB improvements. But again, I'll kind of table the rest of my presentation, most of it, or report, most of it already sent to you. But if there's anything in the few slides that I did not, I'll make sure to send to you. So, but I'll stop there for any questions or any follow-up. And I'll hand it back to Andrea. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. We appreciate it. Any other questions, thoughts? I know there's just a lot going on all the time, it seems like. Okay. Well, you know how to reach Ken and me. That's it, y'all. That's what we have on the agenda. I just want to say how much I deeply appreciate each and every one of you. I know you've been working so hard, doing a million things. And if you're like me, you are so ready for 2020 to be done. So I hope you all take some time to take care of yourselves, take care of your families. Hope you have a good holiday, or at least just some rest and relaxation upcoming. And with that, I will close out this meeting at 9:46. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your evening.